Hurricane Matthew leaves more than 800 dead in Haiti as aid agencies launch emergency appeals. Good evening. The most powerful storm in a decade has brought disaster once again to the poor Caribbean country of Haiti. The number of people thought to have been killed has jumped sharply through the day as the scale of damage along the south coast was revealed. Also tonight, was it an altercation, a scuffle or a criminal assault? The UKIP MEP Stephen Wolfe is still in hospital after his collapse. The man he was arguing with, Mike Hookham, joins us live. Don't panic, says Chancellor Philip Hammond after the pound plunges, warning there's more post-Brexit trouble ahead. And days after his peace deal was rejected by his people, the Colombian president has been given the Nobel Peace Prize. So more than 800 people are now confirmed to have died in Haiti, and the UN says 350,000 are in need of assistance in the wake of Hurricane Matthew. The Red Cross launched an emergency appeal to help those left homeless and helpless. The worst storm to hit the Caribbean in a decade, Matthew is now making its way up America's southeastern seaboard, bringing high winds and heavy rain. Our Washington correspondent, Kylie Morris, is in Daytona Beach in Florida. Kylie.
Well, Christian, in the past hours, we've measured winds here. The local officials have measured winds of more than 100 miles an hour as the eye of the storm passed only 6 miles out to sea from here. You can see this roiling sea that's been pushed up by the hurricane, and now that's what people are very worried about here, a storm surge that pushes water into local low-lying areas. 25% of the people here in Daytona Beach decided not to evacuate. So speaking to the local police chief, he's very worried about them. He's worried about flooding, and that's what they're going to be focused on. There is nothing like the kind of catastrophic damage here as has been experienced in Haiti, but certainly we've had a sense of the real strength of this storm, seeing lots of debris being blown around, windows put out in the hotel where we're staying, and certainly, you know, a lot of roofing, iron sheeting being pushed down the street. Now from here, the expectation is that the storm continues to hug the coast, heading north up towards South Carolina. But first, let's look at the damage Hurricane Matthew has already wrought. This is what it looks like when an unforgiving storm descends on one of the world's poorest nations. In Le Cayet, on the island's southern coast, Hurricane Matthew peeled back tin rooftops and tossed what flimsy protection people had into the air. Then it sent muddy rivers of water through the streets, deluging houses, drowning those who might for a moment have thought they were safe. The burials have only begun. The death toll is likely to rise as the search begins in areas cut off until now. In Jeremy, one aid worker returned to check on his family.
But by God's grace, we had no death. But right now, most people lost everything, their clothing, their clothes, their shoes, their home, and so they have no shelter. And so that's why I come back to see what can be done.
In truth, poor infrastructure and poverty, made worse by the massive earthquake 6 years ago, made Haiti even more vulnerable to Matthew's destructive forces. The government warned people to evacuate, but many refused, not believing the authorities were telling the truth. From Haiti, Matthew is now poised on Florida's edge, delivering catastrophic winds and teeming rain. It's estimated more than 2 million people evacuated the coastline from Palm Beach north to Georgia and South Carolina, but the majority from Florida, encouraged by the state governor, delivering a warning in the starkest of terms.
If you need to evacuate and you haven't, evacuate. This storm will kill you. Time is running out. We don't have that much time left.
In Daytona Beach, time is up. Now anyone who hasn't evacuated can only stay inside, wait for the winds to drop and stay out of the way of flying debris. The beachfront itself is now under a curfew. SWAT teams and police have themselves taken shelter. Electricity is a rare commodity. Hundreds of thousands have no power after the destructive force of Matthew overnight knocked out transformers. Exactly those conditions forced many to seek shelter earlier in the evening in a high school gymnasium, where they hoped at least to stay dry and safe.
It's really nerve-wracking to stay in your home while the wind blows all night long and you don't know if any limbs are going to come through or not, or the power is going to go out.
We want to be around for a few more years to see our grandkids, so here we are.
I'm worried about my house, what I'm going to see when I go back there. We might not have much of a house left.
Sidney King left his home close to the beach and brought newspapers, maps and a Bible to stay in touch, he says, with the boss.
As he signs the checks, I don't want my check signed tonight. And with the possibility of a tidal surge saying hi, like 8 feet to 10 feet, I'm not going to play around.
We're all spread out, but the whole family came here just to be safe.
Okay.
Just to be safe.
Didn't want to risk it.
No, not the little ones here, not the little ones. Better safe than sorry. I'd rather be in here than risk it at home.
But about a quarter of residents chose not to evacuate, instead boarding up their houses to ride out the weather.
Fire department is right there.
Right.
All my neighbors are staying. My landlord lives on the river there. He's 70s, he's staying. You know, they're hyping it up.
But Hurricane Matthew's not done yet, with the threat of more strong winds and high water still to come.
Where's the storm going from here, Kylie?
Well, I should just say there are now 1 million people dealing without electricity here in Florida itself. It is heading north, though. If you were here and had a sat-nav at the moment, Chris, you would see just a line of red dots joining Savannah and Atlanta, while people from that historic town in Georgia flee to the west to try and get away from the high winds. And then going even further north, there are real concerns for other historic cities in South Carolina as well. So we know where it's going. People know what they need to do. I think there's actually some video that we have which shows people who are called hurricane hunters here actually flying into the very center of this hurricane. It's this extraordinarily turbulent experience, as you can see. But finally, in the end, they break through into the calm, the eye of the storm. But certainly there is no calm yet along this coastline. There are real fears. People are being urged, certainly if they're in mobile homes or caravan parks, to get away from the coast, to get away from these winds and seek shelter. Only after they've done that, only after the storm has passed through and finally turned back out to sea, will people be able to register the damage that's been wrought and begin to repair.
Thanks, Kylie. Well, earlier I spoke to Yolette Etienne, the country director for ActionAid in Haiti, via the internet, and I started by asking her what the situation is like on the ground.
The situation is very complicated because of the access. You know, the infrastructure were damaged, and now to access people affected is very, very difficult. And in particular, the gardens, and still now communication is dropped. And for the past 3 days, it was very difficult to get some communication, and even officials cannot complete the assessment because of this situation. And there is also some fears of epidemics, cholera or Zika. And since people also are in shelters, and most of the shelters were churches or school, and they also lost the roof. So the situation is very, very complicated.
Why is Haiti so vulnerable when it is only a few years since the international community sent billions of dollars of aid after the earthquake?
Clearly, we can be prepared, but we cannot avoid natural disasters. And the disaster hitting Haiti is, even now, this storm is a very violent storm. We can be prepared, but we can avoid this. Clearly, we get also the political situation, but because of vulnerability of people, because of level of poverty, and clearly the level of preparation cannot be like in a developing country. And there are some effort from the civil protection in Haiti, but clearly in terms of participation, in terms of level of governance, but in terms also of level of relationship with the international community, that all affect this situation.
Local officials have just revealed that the number of people killed has jumped very sharply to 842 now. That's a big increase on what the early reports were. Do you think this is going to get worse?
Probably. And of course, we still not have official figures because this morning, again, they explained all the difficulties to continue the assessment. But clearly, in the mountain, they are talking about in area, that remote area, they cannot really have a mechanism to control what happened in the death. But probably we can have more than that.
That's Etienne from Action Aid in Haiti. Now, the man accused of knocking down a fellow UKIP MEP during an altercation at the European Parliament building in Strasbourg says he neither punched nor pushed him. The row centred on Stephen Woolf's admission that he had considered defecting to the Conservatives. Mr Woolf remains in hospital under observation tonight. We'll be speaking to the other man involved, Mike Hookham, in a moment. But first, over to Porrick O'Brien, who is outside the hospital in Strasbourg. Porrick.
Well, Krish, the best that we can do tonight is say that we're fractionally closer to an answer to the question exactly why is Stephen Woolf in the hospital behind us. Whatever the reason is, it was serious. Remember, he's been in there now for nearly 2 days. We expect that he will be discharged either tomorrow or the day after. So thankfully, it's turned out not to be as serious as we originally thought. People are telling us from UKIP that he's in good form sitting up in bed in hospital. But this will have been a deeply traumatic experience for Stephen Woolf. Remember, as well as being an MEP, he's a husband, he's a dad. So a traumatic experience both for him and for his family. But it also speaks to another trauma, a trauma deep in the heart of UKIP. First up, the thumbs up. Stephen Woolf recovering well in hospital in Strasbourg with no obvious bruising to his face. Next up, what actually happened to the would-be leader of UKIP that left him like this? Or, in other words, did Hookham hit him? The MEP for Yorkshire North Lincolnshire today said it was handbags at dawn, not punches at Parliament.
It was embarrassing tussle, handbags at dawn, should never have happened. It was embarrassing. There wasn't one punch thrown or landed by me or him.
Outside the Haute-Pierre Hospital today, after visiting with Stephen Woolf,
he's sick of croissants and he's looking forward to a good full English breakfast, so as you can tell, he is in good form.
He went on to say that a conciliatory email had been sent.
Now, Stephen has this morning reached out the hand of friendship to Mr Hookham, to Mike, and has realised that things did go too far in the MEP meeting. So he's made moves forward for keeping us all as a band of friends.
Another MEP running against Woolf as leader told us today that he'd arrived just after the altercation. He said that Woolf had looked like he was recovering from an awkward stumble.
When I got there, I saw Mike standing with his hands by his sides, Stephen lying halfway through a doorway as if he'd leaned against an unlatched door and fallen through. I saw no evidence at all of any punches being thrown, no fight, and honestly, we are talking seconds. So really, any talk of a big brawl or a fight is nonsense.
UKIP have launched an investigation.
We will know by the middle of next week exactly what happened, and I think anybody, any representative of UKIP, going on the airwaves now, opining about something where they weren't even present, I think frankly is wrong, particularly given that a man is lying ill in hospital.
The bigger question: how is it that a party that has just succeeded in rewriting the British political narrative,
we did it! We got our country back!
is reduced to schoolboy-style accounts to the head teacher post-playground scrap? So, the good news. Stephen Woolf is recovering well and is expected to be discharged from hospital soon. The bad news for UKIP is it's beginning to appear like a party pretty much permanently bedding down in intensive care. And that image of Stephen Woolf face down on a gangway in the European Parliament is becoming charged with a certain symbolism.
Well, joining me now from Hull is the UKIP MEP, Mike Hookham. Just take us precisely through what happened as you and Stephen Woolf were facing each other in that anteroom. Who touched who first?
Well, let's say what happened beforehand when Stephen Wolfe, in a meeting, and I was questioning some of the stuff that he was saying, stood up and said, let's take this out of the room, mano a mano, taking his jacket off and went into an anteroom, which I went into. Stupid enough, silly, I should never have done it and I would not do it again. I went into there. Stephen Wolfe came at me. It was a tussle. It lasted 2 or 3 seconds before other MEP colleagues came into the anteroom. I'd backed off. The door opened. Stephen Wolfe somehow fell off his own feet and fell into the room. And that was basically it.
Right.
And what
Let's just back up a bit. Let's just back up a bit.
Very strongly.
Hang on. Let's just go back. So you say it was a tussle. What do you mean by a tussle? Who touched who?
Stephen Wolfe came at me. It was basically both getting hold of each other. Nothing serious.
Where
nothing
did he grab
violent. Not throwing a. Well, we've gone into this all day long. It was an incident that lasted 2 or 3 seconds, and if you're trying to remember where each other grabbed each other, it's ridiculous. The more important
But you
thing
had
is
hold of him.
That.
Well, hang on. Just slow down. Just slow down. We've got a bit of time to go into this in detail. Did you have hold of him, and did he have hold of you?
No, he had hold of me. He had hold of me.
Right, and you didn't have hold of him at all?
Well, I'd have had my hand on it, somewhere on his body.
So you had
where
hold of him
I
as
cannot
well?
remember.
And so did you push him?
Yes.
You pushed him?
No. No.
So what? So you had hold of each other. Then what happened?
Yeah, just a tussle.
What's a tussle?
As I say, a tussle is two people just,
pushing.
got hold of each other, sorry?
Pushing each other.
Pushing.
Right.
Well,
what's a tussle then?
Just
explain
between each other.
I just don't. If you say you weren't pushing each other and you weren't hitting each other, what is a tussle? You pulling faces at each other, or
got
what?
hold of each other and saying what? Sorry.
What were you doing precisely before he fell over?
We was facing up to each other. He'd come at me. Was facing up to each other. We had hold of each other.
Right.
It was a 2 or 3 second tussle.
So how did he fall over?
I've no idea. The door opened, the MEP colleagues came into the room. I'd backed off by that point. Stephen fell into the room over his own feet, whatever had happened, I don't know. And he fell onto the floor, onto a male MEP colleague of ours that was in that room, in the doorway. As far as I could see, that was it. He never hit any windows, any door casings, any chairs or anything.
And then what did you do?
Well, I went back to my seat.
And when did you
but
discover...
more importantly...
When did you discover that Stephen Wolfe had collapsed?
More importantly, I did not punch Stephen Wolfe.
Yeah, no, you said that. You've made that clear. When did you discover that he had collapsed?
Right. The day before, I had one of my one of my people that works for me, assistants, taken very ill, seriously ill. She was in hospital. I was told by the doctor that she had to be taken home and she had to be accompanied on the aircraft. So I had to change all of my plans, my travel plans, and I accompanied her. I had to go pick her up from the hospital. So I left that meeting early at 10:30 to go pick this lady up, to take her back to her parents. I accompanied her on the aircraft. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a text saying that Stephen had collapsed. That's all I knew. A text saying it had collapsed.
From who?
One of the people in the Parliament, one of my colleagues.
What did you do then?
Well, he collapsed. I knew nothing of why he'd collapsed or anything. I didn't know anything at that point.
Did you not think it was connected to when you saw him on the floor a couple of hours before?
I didn't see him on the floor a couple of hours before. I'd left the Parliament at 10:30.
I
wasn't in the Parliament.
I thought you said you saw him falling through the door.
Yes, that was in the
So you saw him on the floor?
He fell through it. Yeah, he got up from there. He got up from when he fell through the door. He got up and said, all I wanted to do was speak to Mike in the other room, where my colleague Patrick O'Flynn MEP said, no, Stephen, you stood up threateningly and said, I will take this out of the room, mano a mano.
Okay.
So that was the scene. He then said, right, I'm leaving. I don't want to be in the meeting. He hadn't answered any of the questions that we were putting to him about his connection with the Tories, whether he'd
We'll talk about all the politics another time. We just want to talk about the violence and the fall and
there was no violence. Sorry, there was no violence.
Well, there was a tussle. I mean, you can debate whether a tussle is violent or not. Some people would say it is, some people would say it isn't.
I can assure you, there was no violence.
All right.
This is not a violent tussle.
Okay, well, let's talk about the tussle and the fallout.
This is two silly grown men. This is two silly grown men that shouldn't have got into this position. It was a heated debate, and it shouldn't have gone as far as it did.
Do you think it shows you're unfit for elected office, which is what some people are suggesting?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It shows that I was under immense stress at the time. It shows that Stephen asked me to go outside and I shouldn't have done it, and I've regretted it. We've all done things in life that we shouldn't have done. I did that a moment there and I shouldn't have done it. I apologise to the people in the room. I apologise to the membership of the party. I shouldn't have done it. But I did not
left the room,
punch Stephen Woolf.
When he said, let's take this outside, did you think you were going out to have a fight?
No, he said, let's take this outside.
Yeah,
not
but
mine.
when you went outside, following him after what he said, did you think you were going to have a fight?
With the intentions of what he was saying, yes, I thought he was going to have a fight with me.
Right, and so he came at you, but then you didn't do anything, is what you're saying. You tussled, but you're not really sure. Yeah, okay.
It was a tussle.
Right.
It was a bust. It was 2 or 3 seconds.
Now, your own colleagues, Lisa Duffy, for example, said this is embarrassing. How much damage do you think you've done to UKIP?
It's an embarrassment to me, and it's an embarrassment to Stephen.
And to the party.
Exactly the same, and to the party. It was something that shouldn't have happened.
Don't you think you should resign
then?
then?
I apologise for that. No, I don't think I should resign. It's something, these heated debates go on in all different parties. We've had it in all different parties. It's gone on, when it's probably gone so far. We've had Labour MPs thumping other people. I never thumped anybody. It was a silly argument that got out of hand. And Stephen has emailed me this morning and he said he wants to meet with me and discuss what's gone on and shake my hand. I replied to him, I will do exactly the same. I want to shake his hand and I want to forget all that's gone on and just carry on.
Well, I mean, there is an investigation that may be starting within the European Parliament outside UKIP itself. You could face some sort of punishment, couldn't you?
Well, I'm quite willing to meet with Mr. Kamal and put my side of the case across. I've not a problem with that.
Mike Hookham, thank you very much indeed for joining us and for telling us in all that detail what happened.
Thank you very much.
Now, they call it a flash crash. Just after midnight last night, the pound plummeted by 6% on the currency exchanges to just $1.18. It's recovered slightly since, and the fall was blamed on a rogue algorithm on automated computer trading. But the underlying cause of its downward progress is the apparent move towards a hard Brexit, which could result in tariffs against British goods. The Chancellor, Philip Hammond, favours a gentler exit and is in Washington seeking to reassure the financial movers and shakers that everything is going to be all right. Our business correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, was with Mr. Hammond today. Helia.
Well, the Chancellor is very keen to brush aside this debate between a hard Brexit and a soft Brexit, saying essentially nothing's changed since the referendum, except perhaps the penny has dropped with the market ever since we have this trigger date for Article 50. But the picture he painted was one of ongoing turbulence, and that's a really worrying thought. If we talk about that flash crash, it wiped almost 7% of the value of the pound in minutes. That plunged sterling to historic lows. But here in Washington, when I spoke to the Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, he talked about the flash crash in terms of a market technical event. That means something much more to do with the super fast trading computers than the underlying problems of Brexit. The bank's actually referred this now to an international regulator. But the Chancellor would be crazy not to appreciate the full problems that the UK economy now faces. Yesterday, he was on Wall Street talking to US banks about what they needed, both in terms of immigration and the nitty-gritty of their business. And of course, there's a lot of focus on what the Treasury can deliver when it comes to the autumn statement, especially since they've dropped George Osborne's deficit-cutting targets. Now, in case you were confused about talking about spending being Keynesian economics more related to a Labour government, the Chancellor's very quick to point out this won't be a spending splurge. But the kind of language he talked about is all about productivity-enhancing investment, which adds up to building schools, roads, hospitals, things like that. I spoke to him about the government's changing attitude towards spending, but first I asked him whether the market would crash every time a European politician coughed.
Well, we can expect markets to go up and down during this period because there will be uncertainty and there will be, as I said, some turbulence. But you're not in control,
basically. If markets are defining what's happening based on what European leaders say, you're not in control.
Well, markets price currencies, they price other commodities. That's the way markets work. And as I've said earlier this week, we can expect a period when there is some turbulence in the markets in response to things that are happening and speculation that's going on. What really matters here is that the fundamentals of the UK economy are strong. We'll have the highest growth of the G7 countries this year, record high employment, very strong growth in the first 2 quarters. So the fundamentals are strong, but of course the Brexit decision has introduced some uncertainty into that equation.
And you were saying earlier that finally the market seems to have woken up to the fact that Brexit is actually happening. Do you think there's been a lag in that understanding?
Well, we've always been clear that we expected a market reaction to the news that we were leaving the European Union and to the uncertainty that would follow that decision. I think perhaps the surprise is it's taken apparently some market commentators this long and needing to hear it from the Prime Minister at the party conference to take on board that this really is happening.
And they've woken up now?
Well, apparently the case that people are responding to something that really isn't news, that we're leaving the European Union, recovering our sovereignty, taking control of our borders, but that we are then entering into a negotiation with our European Union partners with the objective of achieving the greatest degree of mutual beneficial free trade in goods and services as we possibly can.
And the Prime Minister has laid out a distinct new Conservative approach that worries about working class, about the centre, that seems to want to go after business misdeeds. For a pro-business Tory like yourself, isn't this interventionist approach just a bit Ed Miliband?
Well, look, we're clear that we are strongly supportive of a liberal market economic system which has delivered wealth and continues to deliver growth for this country. But the Prime Minister pointed out some of the challenges and some of the problems within that system, and it's right that we try to address them. Where markets are broken or not functioning correctly, we have to intervene to make sure that they work properly in the interest of competition and the consumer. And where people abuse those markets, whether it's company directors behaving inappropriately or whether it's companies avoiding their tax liabilities, then of course we have to intervene to make sure that they behave properly.
Chancellor, earlier you said you were going to be boring for the next 2 years as the market goes up and down. Would you be satisfied with that if the history books wrote you up as boring? Is that the real Philip Hammond?
Doesn't bother me at all. What matters is that we support the economy in an appropriate way. And I will continue to say that over the next couple of years we will be going through a period of turbulence, and we will support the economy during that period of turbulence. We will also be carrying out negotiation with the European Union, and we're not going to comment on the movements of markets, and we're not going to give a running commentary on the negotiation with the European Union. If that's boring, so be it.
Philip Hammond. Now, the Colombian president has been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work on a peace deal, despite it being voted down by the people in a referendum just days ago. Juan Manuel Santos and the leader of the FARC rebel group were both contenders for the Peace Prize after they signed a deal last month aimed at ending 52 years of war. But Colombian voters rejected it, despite the failure. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee said it hoped the prize would encourage all parties to continue working towards peace. Now, within the last hour, the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has completed his shadow cabinet reshuffle, but despite bringing back one former critic to his team, he seems to have done little to heal the rifts in his party. Our political correspondent Michael Crick joins us from Westminster. Michael.
Well, Christian, we now have the full list of 30 names. We were led to believe that this list would have quite a few surprises on it, and we were also led to believe, after Jeremy Corbyn's re-election as Labour leader, that there were lots of Labour MPs keen to return to the front bench. Well, these are the facts. 63 Labour MPs resigned from the front bench over the summer in protest at Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. By my count, only 6 of them have returned to the shadow cabinet. Now, it's possible that some will return at lower levels, but also significant is we're not seeing the reappointment of heavyweight names to the shadow cabinet, really, in this list. Tom Watson has taken on the culture, media and sport brief, as well as being deputy leader. John Ashworth is the new shadow health secretary, but Mr Ashworth has lost his place. He's been sacked by Mr Corbyn as one of the members of the NEC, and that, I think, will help Mr Corbyn consolidate, perhaps get the balance of power on the NEC, and that is important for Labour's long-term debates. But no sign of the kind of reconciliation within the parliamentary party people were hoping for.
Thanks, Michael. Stay tuned after the weather for Unreported World. Tonight, Marcel Theroux looks at matchmaking for people with disabilities in India.